If you've seen a lot of my other videos, then you'll notice that I play as democracies a lot in Hearts of Iron 4. I do this because I'm an incredibly boring individual that doesn't like having fun. So given my pretty much unique stance on actually liking democracies in this game, I thought I would rank each democratic path for every nation in this game. I'll rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being garbage. I'll start with the most played nation in this game, Germany. Starting a civil war to switch to democracy is kind of an inconvenience, but it's a pretty easy civil war, so I'll give it that. You can get a 6th research slot, which only 3 nations in the game can do that: the United States, Germany, and New Zealand. It's kind of neat that you can do a constitutional monarchy. Most nations can't really do anything like that. It's usually just full-on republicanism or full-on monarchy. I like that you can create a big old faction with a direct goal in mind of, taking care of communism. However, once you dealt with communism and stuff, there's not really anything else to do after that. So I'd say it's incredibly average. It's not bad, but it's not really good. There's honestly just a lack of focuses for the most part. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Next, we're going to look at France. France is honestly probably one of my favorite democratic options, not because what you do is necessarily that great, but because there's 2 options. Some nations like the Soviet Union don't even have a democratic option, and France gets 2, which is awesome. Usually it's, the democratic historical option. Everything kind of sucks and is falling apart, and you can't really fix it for the most part. But you've got the second option, which, fixes it a little bit more. It's a little bit better, and you still have the option to go historically. And honestly, I think it's pretty decent. There's a lot to work with, and even though most of the things you are working with are just fixing all the problems that you have with your country, I think it's not too many. It's not too many focuses. It feels like just the right amount. Not only that, but each of these focuses feel worth it for the most part. And they're simple. I can read these in under 3 minutes, which is a problem that I have with a lot of the newer focus trees in the game. This focus, it does exactly what it says. It bans communism. This one, it just gives you some political power. They are simple, but worthwhile. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Next, we're going to look at the United Kingdom. Once again, there is a alt history democratic option with global defense where you kind of abandon Chamberlain and go with Churchill. Once again, I really like that this is an option. It's also pretty cool that you can revisit colonial policy if you are a democracy. You don't have to be communist. You can do that anyway. I mean, if you want to. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, but you can. If you just want to be super nice, you can do that. Unlike most of the focus trees, though, most of the ones that have to do with politics, so pretty much this tree over here, you get half of this, and this is already not that many. So most of the focuses just kind of overlap with all the other ideologies, which are mostly these ones. So it's okay. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Kind of middle of the road. It's not bad. It's not great. It's just kind of middle of the road. Next one I want to look at is Spain. So Spain has 6 different options when it comes to politics. So obviously, since there's so many options, each one might not be that extensive. And maintaining the Second Republic, it's not that extensive. So everything before this one is pretty much just all Civil War stuff. So you could kind of cut all this out. So after the Civil War, you're left with this, except some, because like this one is only if you're communist. So there really just isn't that many focuses. Like you get down here, you work your way down here, and then you run out of focuses. Now, I don't deny most of these focuses are pretty worthwhile, and that's one of the things I like to see is that a focus is worthwhile and it's simple. Like this one, it just gives you a straight up recruitable population. That's it. It's not too complicated. I'll say that again. I can read this one in under 3 minutes, and that's what I like about it. However, like I just said, there's just not really that many focuses, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Next, let's look at Portugal. Now, I like this part of the focus tree. I think this part of the focus tree is pretty decent. When it comes to politics, this here is the democratic path. It's kind of like they knew that everyone was just going to go for the monarchist path and kind of ignore everything else. But honestly, it just doesn't even feel like they really tried, if I'm being honest. It's just pretty much you be Britain's little bitch boy. You allow for your elections, you join the allies, and that's quite literally it. Just like Spain, like a lot of these are worthwhile, but there's just there's just no focuses. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's like it. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Next, I'm going to go to the other side of the pond and look at the United States. As somebody that likes Victoria 3 and likes just kind of sitting around waiting for things to happen, America, that's my favorite focus. It's not really my favorite, but it's pretty decent. It's not bad. I like that there's a limited intervention thing. That's pretty freaking neat. I like it when you can play as a democracy, but you can have still have a major impact and go with things like limited interventionism and then, actually, join the wars and, do fun stuff. This is a war game. Let me go to war. Even playing as, historical USA. You can still like take out the UK, and I think that's pretty cool. You can also get 6 research slots, which is pretty worthwhile to mention. And once again, a lot of these, they feel very worthwhile, and it's not just like doing focuses for the sake of doing focuses, working towards something else. Now, I'll admit, these ones right here, these are kind of a wall of text, but most of them aren't. Like this one, Neutrality Act. The name itself is self-explanatory. It just makes you neutral in foreign policy. This one, Arsenal of Democracy, it just straight up gives you factories, and it doesn't do anything else. It just does one thing, and that one thing is worthwhile. Overall, pretty good. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Next, let's look at Canada. Now, a lot of people do not like the Canadian focus trees, or really any of the focus trees with Together for Victory. And the reasoning for that is most of them, they're stuck between either being at war or having high world tension. So for the most part, you're just kind of sitting around, just kind of waiting for things to happen. Honestly, I don't think it's too bad though. There is worthwhile focuses to do while you are waiting. And you know, Canada, they don't have too much manpower at the beginning. They don't have too many factories. Their army is small and doesn't have any guns. So actually taking the time to build up is worthwhile, and it is something you kind of have to do. So, you know, you might as well. So like, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. And once again, each of these focuses, they feel worthwhile for the most part, and they're not a wall of text. This one, give me resources. This one, give me factories. This one, give me factories. It's simple. It doesn't do a million things. This one doesn't even do anything. It just unlocks an advisor. And I'll admit, this one does kind of suck because it just kind of, you know, it's a focus for the sake of doing focuses. But actually, yeah, I've got nothing to say about that. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. Next, let's look at Mexico. In general, Mexico just has a good focus tree. I like that a lot of these, like there's a lot of choices here, but they're not big choices. There's a lot of little choices. Like over here, you can go with agricultural credit bank, or you can go with liberalize the banking sector, and they still end up in the same thing, but it's like whichever one is your personal preference, and it doesn't make too much of a difference, but you can still go with whichever one is your personal preference. And I like that. And there's a lot of that here, which you can be democratic and do all this. You can be whoever and do all this, honestly. Like I said, there's a lot of overlap. Even if you're going like fascist or communist with this one, you can still end up in the same spot while being democratic, because these both lead to Spanish Civil War refugees, which you can go with for either of them. And even if you're democratic, you can still end up with the war goals at the bottom. And you need war goals as a democracy anyway, because you can't justify. Overall, it's very good. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Actually, no, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Next, let's look at Italy. I've actually done a whole video on the democratic path for Italy. And honestly, it's pretty decent. One of the biggest reasons I like the democratic path is because there's 2 of them. You can go with the whole republicanism, start a civil war and overthrow the government, go with Italian socialism and do democracy that way. Or you can not do a civil war, which I'm always a fan of, and do democracy that way. You can form a constitutional monarchy, but you can still keep the king mostly in power. And you also get the option to proclaim the Italian Empire even as a democracy. Then furthermore, you can still go for Rome after that. Now, it would be pretty difficult since you can't justify on anyone unless it's 100% world tension, but it's an option. You can still try it. This does run into a bit of a problem I have though, where a lot of these are just a wall of text, and I look at this and I have to put my face against the screen and like read that for like a solid 4 minutes. Same with this one. There's just a lot to read here. I also feel like some of these focuses don't really do enough, and some of them are just kind of like on their way to the next one. Like this one, Crush Opposition, it removes Shadow Mussolini, which does minus 0.02 political power per day, which is basically completely ignorable. Overall though, it's pretty decent, and you can also still go with foreign affairs, and you can do stuff over here. You can go with Italy first if you're a democracy, which is pretty neat. So overall, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Next, let's look at the Netherlands. So there's sort of 2 democratic options, but there's really just the one because one of them sucks. You can do the historical route and go with Britain. This is what the AI does, but what the player doesn't do. This is just kind of meh. There's just not really a lot to talk about here. It's okay. There's some decent stuff, but it's just kind of meh. This one all the way on the right though, Lead the Modern Democracies. This one is pretty cool. You can go and form the Benelux, and it literally just does that. It creates a faction with all the people in the Benelux. You pay 300 political power to click a button, and you annex and core all of Belgium and Luxembourg, which isn't a lot, but it's easy, and you can do it as a democracy, which you usually don't get to absorb countries as democracies. You can also form a big fat faction with a lot of the minor democracies like Switzerland and Czechoslovakia, kind of in the same vein as like the democratic path with Germany, except instead of, you know, trying to fend off the Soviet Union, you're trying to fend off Germany with this path. You can also do the preemptive strike and go with the best defense is a good offense and just declare war on them early. Overall, it's pretty decent. If I'm being completely honest, I feel like the Netherlands, their focus tree in general, just has too many focuses. I feel like you can't really focus on one thing because then you'll leave everything else to, fall apart. Which I guess that's kind of makes sense. You kind of got to focus on one thing. You got to ignore the Navy to favor the Army or do the opposite. But I like being able to focus on everything and be big and strong and powerful and awesome. So in general, I kind of got beef with the focus tree in general, but the democratic path, it's pretty good. I'm going to also give it an 8 out of 10. Next, let's talk about Denmark. It's okay. Well, it's not okay. It's decent. It's good. It's good. I like it. I don't really have a lot to say about it, if I'm being honest. Once again, I like the idea that you can go with the historical path, go with policy of disarmament, or you can go with, the preemptive, we need to fix things, we need to do things a little differently path while still staying a democracy. Big fan of that. Like with Mexico, there's also a lot of choices here. Same as Italy, though, I feel like a lot of these focuses just do too much, if I'm being honest. Like this focus here is a focus that I would say does too much because it's just, I can't read it in under a minute. This focus here, this is a good focus. I can read this very quickly, and it does something very worthwhile. It gives you a lot of infrastructure. Enough complaining about that, though. Focus tree itself, it's good. I like it. I ain't got anything else to say about it. I'm gonna go with a 7.5 out of 10. Let's look at Norway next. Once again, I like to see that there's a alt history path while you can still stay a democracy and just kind of, fix things more than historically. If I'm being honest, though, I don't really like it that much. If I'm being honest, it's okay, but you can't really fix like your army until you're actually at war if you go with the historical path. I don't really like that part, but you can go with the other path and do it earlier. There's a lot of focuses in the way, though. It's just okay. Focus tree in general, I like a lot of these ones over here. A lot of these are pretty decent. The focus tree here, though, it's just like, it's a lot of the problems I have with other focus trees. It's just kind of like, this is a perfect example of them. Also, broken gun policies. You're like purposefully breaking your own military industry. You do get some very good bonuses to your civilian factories and whatnot, though, so it is kind of worthwhile. But it's like, I look at this, there's a lot of focuses in the way of actually fixing the problem. Sometimes you have to be at war to fix them. Like, a lot of these, I feel like, just do too much. Like, this gives you, like, 5 different things. Like, just give me stability, or just give me war support. You don't have to give me all this. Then I go over to the monarchy one, the one that they're like, oh, they're actually going to do the monarchy one. And, I look at this one, it's like, this gets rid of a bad debuff. This one gets rid of a bad debuff. You don't have to take, like, 6 focuses to get rid of it. There's no decisions that are tied into it. It just does one thing, and that one thing is very worthwhile. And I just don't see any real focuses like that for the most part over here. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Like I said, it's not bad. It's not good. Next, let's look at Sweden. I like it. A lot of these focuses do feel very worthwhile. And some of them are pretty unique. Like this one gives you war economy. It switches you to war economy and disables the demobilize our economy mission, which is unique and it's worthwhile and it's cool and it's different. So unlike a lot of the other democratic options you get, it feels like this one had a lot more effort put into it. And you also get war goals at the bottom, which is always nice because, like I said, war game. Yeah, there's not too many focuses down here, but it's just a lot of them are, like I said, very worthwhile. They do the things that are worthwhile, and you still get war goals at the end. And you can even stay democratic and do Nordic Defense Council, although I did that and it didn't really work, but I did that the day after this DLC was released, so it was probably just a glitch that they hadn't worked out yet. And also you can join Finland in their war against Soviet Union, which I think is a really, really cool option, because when I first opened up this game after getting this DLC, I played as Sweden, and I went and I fought with Finland, because I wanted to chill out, not do anything too bad, just sit down, listen to music, and play around with the new mechanics. And I actually, I got to fight a little bit, but not too much. I didn't have to do a total war. Overall, I like it. It's good. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Actually, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. The only problems I have is that it's not that many focuses. But like I said, that's not bad. As long as they're all worthwhile, that's fine. Actually, no, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because I like it personally. Next, let's look at Finland. So you kind of have to go somewhat communist and then take a side step to do democracy. And there's just not really anything to do here. It's like you join the allies, you do a few things here and there, you dig up some dirt, you maybe form a thing with the Scandinavians. It feels like the same as Finnish neutrality, but worse. Well, not worse, just not as good, if that makes sense. I'm going to give the same score I gave Norway and give it a 4 out of 10. Next, let's look at the Soviet Union. They don't have a democratic path anywhere. 0 out of 10. Let's look at Estonia next. Honestly, I think for Estonia, they knew that no one was going to play as democracy, so they just didn't put a whole lot of effort into it. But you know what? It's actually not that bad. You can form a cool little faction with the Baltics, and there's a lot of bonuses to that here. You can even annex them. Or you can join the Allies. The biggest problem with it is just Estonia's problem in general. It's just a lack of manpower. They get a decent amount of factories and everything. They don't start out very strong though, and they have a very severe lack of manpower. So you kind of have to conquer stuff and core stuff with, rally the nation. Overall, it is pretty decent though, and the biggest problem is that it's a joke. No one is playing democratic Estonia, and I think Paradox knows this. They did try very hard. I will give them that. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. Next, let's look at Latvia. I'll be honest with you, I haven't played as Latvia, like, ever. So I honestly can't really rank their democratic path. So I'm gonna give it a question mark out of 10. Next, Lithuania. I also haven't played as Lithuania before, so I'm going to give it the same score of question mark out of 10. Poland. Poland has an awesome focus tree just in general. I'm going to rank Poland very, very highly though because of one focus and one focus specifically. Purchase Madagascar. Now, due to the democratic path, you have to start a communist civil war, sort of. It does have the same problem with a lot of democratic paths of just a lack of focuses because they knew that no one was going to do it. I mean, you see all the awesome stuff with the monarchy path. Why would you want to do democracy? But what they have done is it's pretty decent. And if you go with Britain, you can press for Liberia. You can also invite the Baltics and the Romania into your faction if you go with France. But honestly, mainly for the fact that you can purchase colonies off of people, that is like so awesome. There is kind of a lack of focuses at the bottom, but you'd probably be doing, the stuff over here instead. So I'm going to give Poland like an 8 out of 10, mostly because of that. Next, let's look at Czechoslovakia. Now, this is going to be a very, very unpopular opinion, but I kind of like the Czechoslovakian focus tree. It is simple, and every focus feels like it does something. It's not just something that you have to do while waiting for other stuff, except for like this one. But like all these other ones, they're extremely worthwhile. The democratic path, like it's not bad. You can get an extensive conscription as a democracy just by doing this focus for free too. And this focus here, Beacon of Liberty, this gives you awesome stuff, and it's not a wall of text. You can also create your own faction with Yugoslavia and Romania, and then you can dissolve Hungary, which is awesome because that eliminates them as a threat if you switch their ideology or make them a puppet. So if you retain your guarantee, France and Britain declare war on them, and you get Romania and Yugoslavia, you can honestly beat Germany when they come for you. Now, I'll admit, it does lack a good bit of flavor and, the 1,000 focus trees that most people are used to, 1,000 focus trees. But god damn it, I like it. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Next, we're going to look at Hungary. It is a complete joke. It is absolutely, it's awful. It's bad. There's just like no focuses here. Democratic path is a constitutional monarchy. You can create a faction called the Balkan Pact, and then you can only invite Romania to it. You can join the Allies, and then there's one focus after that. Now, it's a good focus. It's a worthwhile focus. I won't deny that these focuses are, for the most part, worthwhile, but there's not very many of them. You can only go with one of these. So after elected democratic king, there's 4 focuses in the democratic path. I'm going to give it like a 1 out of 10. Let's look at Romania next. Now, Romania is an interesting focus tree. You start as a monarchy and you kind of stay like that for a while. And you can go democratic while keeping the king around, which is kind of neat. You don't have to, cut off their heads like most democracies do. You can be democratic and then still go for Balkans dominance and get all these war goals and stuff, which, like I've said before, you're a democracy. You can't really justify unless it's 100% world tension. So you need these war goals. And a lot of people do like the fact that Balkan dominance exists. It's like you go 2 focuses into the game and you're already at war, and it's a war game. And the fact that you can do that as a democracy is pretty great. I'll give it a 7 out of 10 just because it does kind of lack focuses. Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia does not have a democratic path. You can flip to democracy the old way, but there's no like specific path for it. You just kind of go with the normal non-aligned path and then switch to democracy while you're doing that with an advisor. This guy here, you wait for democracy to tick up and then you just do the focuses you would have done anyway as a monarchy. So since there isn't really a democratic path, but there kind of is, but not really, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I won't deny that some of these focuses, they're worthwhile. You can get rid of your multitude of problems with them. And some of the focuses over here, they're very worthwhile. It's like, give me a research slot, give me factories, and that's what it does. But it just doesn't have a path specifically for democracy. So I'm just going to give it a 5 out of 10, middle of the road. Actually, no, I'm going to give it a question mark out of 10. Let's look at Bulgaria next. The Bulgarian focus tree in general is pretty good. You can keep the Tsar around, go with democratic principles, and then you can either abolish the monarchy, or you can not do that. Like I said, it's cool that you can keep the monarchy around her without, you know, cutting everyone's head off. You can also still do plot against Boris and then return of Tsar Ferdinand. So you can be a democracy and then still go for fate of the Balkans. I mean, you'll switch to not being a democracy anymore. Actually, you know, that is a good point. Let's look at the actual democratic path. You can either go for a Balkan Federation or join the Allies, and honestly, they're both good options. A lot of these are kind of walls of text, if I'm being honest, but a lot of them do also feel worthwhile. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. So, okay, Greece next. The democratic path is bringing home the exiled republicans, then going down this path, which goes to Byzantium. Now, you have to jump through a few hurdles to get Byzantium and then switch to fascism halfway. So if you actually stick with democracy, you're very limited at the end here because you can't do the rest of these focuses. You can go to war with Turkey at the end, which is kind of neat, but it's just, you run out of stuff to do. There's just a lot more stuff to do with the king's government and metaxism and the historical path. Honestly, the historical path is the best path unless you go for Byzantium, but once again, you can't do that as a democracy. Now, I actually really like the Greek focus tree, but the democratic path, it's just kind of eh. I like that a lot of these focuses are simple. They're not really walls of text for the most part. Some of them are completely worthless, like this one specifically, which honestly, this focus specifically, I just want to point it out. This is the dumbest focus I've ever seen. Now that I got that off my chest, I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. Mainly because you're just not doing the democratic path to be a democracy. You're doing the democratic path so you can form Byzantium. Let's look at Turkey next. Honestly, I've played as Turkey one time. I did play it as democracy though, but I've only done it one time. Honestly, to do the democracy path, you kind of have to do all the things to do the Ottoman path and then not actually do the Ottoman path. And you still end up at the same place that you would have gone if you went historically non-aligned. You can also do the Balkan faction or whatever. A lot of people seem to not like this path. I kind of like this path though. That's kind of cool that you can do this path and this path as democracy or not aligned or whatever. The actual democratic path itself, it's kind of it's okay. A lot of people don't like the Turkish focus tree very much. I think it's okay. I don't think it's as bad as I don't think it's bad. It's just it's not great. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Let's leave Europe now and go to Ethiopia. They don't have a democratic path. 0 out of 10. Next, we have South Africa. I've never played as South Africa. It looks mostly like the Canadian focus tree. Since I haven't really played it, I don't think I can really truly give it like a proper rating since I haven't played it. I'm going to give it a question mark out of 10. Another country I haven't played as, the British Raj. Question mark out of 10. Another country I haven't played as, Australia. Question mark out of 10. New Zealand. It's pretty decent. Albeit it's pretty small. Now, where have I heard that before? I think this focus here is extremely hilarious. Overall, there's just not a lot here, but each focus is pretty worthwhile and it's not bad. If you're independent, you can also get 6 research slots, which is pretty neat. I also think this focus is pretty hilarious. Overall, it's kind of standard. There's not really a whole lot to talk about if I'm being honest. Most of these focuses, they are worthwhile. They give you one thing and that one thing is worthwhile. They are simple. I don't take several minutes to read them. I quite like it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, or I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Let's look at Japan next. It's bad. Well, it's not bad. It's okay. You get the option to join the Allies, and then with this focus, you get some decisions where you can pretty much just take over the Dutch East Indies just by asking for it. That's pretty sick in my opinion. You can also do the same thing with the Philippines. Instead of being a super militarized society and, and going and conquering it, you just ask politely for it. And honestly, they say yes a lot. There is very few focuses in general, but the whole focus tree itself is pretty small, so that's kind of online with everything else. If you're playing as Japan, you're going to play as a historical thing, because it's the best path, if I'm being honest. So it doesn't really feel like they put a lot of effort into this. It's not bad, though. It's not good, but it's not awful. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Actually, no, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 10. Let's look at China next. They don't start out as democratic, but they kind of only have a democratic path. And I like the Chinese focus tree, so I'm going to give it like an 8. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's just each of these focuses, they do something simple and worthwhile. This one gives you war support. Give me stability. Give me war support. Give me stability. Give me a war goal. Give me political power. Don't give me like 18 different things in very small amounts. I'll admit a lot of these focuses here, they're kind of okay. Like this one is completely worthless. Actually, no, it would actually be pretty decent because you have to have high relations for this part of the tree, which no one likes, but it's not that bad. If you remove the fact that you have to have a high opinion of somebody to get through it, then it's pretty decent in my opinion. I give it a 9 out of 10. Next, we have Communist China, which doesn't really have a democratic path, but they have a social democracy path, which is communism with a hint of democracy in it. I'm going to count that as close enough. I haven't really played as Communist China just because I don't really want to. I've seen Feedback Gaming play this and Hoi4 play this though, and it looks like it's pretty good. So I'm going to give it like a 6 out of 10, but really I'm giving it a question mark out of 10. The warlords don't really have a democratic path. They don't really have much in general, and I've never played as one of them. So I'm not really going to say anything else. Question mark out of 10. Next, Iceland, which I almost forgot about. Democratic is the historical path or the alt history path where you kind of stand with Denmark a little bit more, be a little bit less of a pushover. As Iceland though, there's not really a lot you can do in general, just because you're a tiny island with no people living in it and no factories and nothing but debuffs. Honestly, I haven't played it yet, but that's mostly just because it just came out recently. From what I've seen, it looks kind of meh. Almost everyone I've seen play as Iceland just goes down the fascist path and goes with the Viking spirit. Just because, you know, Vikings are cool. Democracy and neutrality really isn't. At least in terms of, you know, a war game. I'm going to give it a question mark out of 10. And we have one focus tree left, Albania, aka the default focus tree. Never mind, I actually forgot about Switzerland, but we're going to talk about the default focus tree first because I already mentioned it. The democratic part of the focus tree for the default focus tree is awful. It is completely god-awful, and I hate it. This is probably my least favorite focus in the entire game. I hate it even more than this one. You can go with intervention focus and then start sending volunteers everywhere, but like it seems kind of pointless, at least in the grand scheme of things. But it's a default focus tree. There's just not a lot here in general, so I'm gonna give it like a 2.5, 3 out of 10. And the last one, the embodiment of democracy itself, Switzerland. Now, for the most part, no one really likes the Swiss focus tree. And in terms of the democratic path, which is most of it, it's not that great. And the reason I don't like it very much is just because there's a lot of in-game like mechanics that no other countries have that it's confusing. I find it incredibly confusing. There's a lot of mechanics that most countries don't have. I don't feel like I'm playing a normal game of Hoi4. I feel like I'm playing something modded, or maybe even a different game altogether. It's all very confusing. The whole system with militias, the balance of power, and the federal council mechanics. I don't like any of it. It's too complicated, and it's too much. There's too much focus tree. Yeah, some of these focuses are pretty good. But you're Switzerland. Who are you going to attack? You've got nothing but major nations around you except for Austria, which you can get with doing the Alpine Protectorate. And the Alpine Protectorate is actually pretty cool. But it's not cool to play. It's only cool to watch other people play it. Because watching other people play it is actually entertaining if they're a fun person to watch. Unlike the focus tree for Switzerland, which is not fun. And you're also stuck having to please the French, the Italians, and the Germans, later the British instead of the French. So for this one, Modernize Air Force, this gives you a debuff to all the relations, which you have to keep high or else everyone's going to declare war on you for no goddamn reason. Why can't I modernize my Air Force? Why do you have to penalize me for that? Everything already sucks. Why do you have to make it suck even more? Anyways, I got beef with the Swiss focus tree, just like everyone else. Now, if they just removed all the weird mechanics, it's not even that bad of a focus tree. There's a lot of good focuses here. A lot of these focuses are worthwhile. They do decent stuff. Like these two focuses together give you 20% division organization for every single division. The focus tree itself really isn't that bad. It's all locked behind weird mechanics that I don't understand. The focus tree itself, though, if you get rid of all the weird mechanics that don't make any sense, it's not that bad. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I forgot about one more country, Manchukuo. There is no democratic path. Question mark out of 10. That's it. Goodbye.